they may not have known that we started last month back up again, and they could have just been busy. But we're glad to see all of you. Actually, we're glad to see all of you because again we are excited about this time of the month when we come together and just really talk on a collegial and professional kind of basis. It's a sort of a rejuvenation for us all in what we do. So welcome everyone, and what we're doing this month is sort of taking off from where we stopped last month. What we decided to do was to look at some trends that are prevalent in higher education today, and to just to talk about that. You know, we're not here to solve problems, but we're just here to sort of, you know, kick it around, see what we get from that, and hey, maybe it may be of some helps in some places or whatever the case may be, but just to talk about it, familiarize ourselves with it, to share what we know one with the other, from one professional to the other. And last month, as we discussed, and it got into some, we sort of got bogged down Can you pause for a second? Because I'm not going to sit right at this table while we want to have our sessions recorded so that they are accessible to anybody else who want to listen or to hear what was. The other thing is we want to be very informal and very, you know, just open and an open discussion kind of business, like, you know, like the brown bag kind of thing, you know, that you may remember. I remember brown bags from years ago. So very informal, but very, you know, professional. So anyway, as I was saying last month, we got talking about trends in higher education, and also too there were packets, and I don't think did we have extra packets?
I have 3 additional packets.
I know, because there's some folks here that this time it wasn't there. So what we did was sort of put together a little agenda just to sort of just guide us, we're not going to be wed to that agenda, but we also have some articles that are attached to that will help us to shape the thoughts that we're bringing out, to provide maybe some you know, some support for what we're talking about, because we can always slip back and say, well, you know what, this article said such and such, but you know, maybe you agree with it, maybe you don't, maybe you have something else that you have come across that's a little bit more profound than what's there, but at least it provides a talking piece for us, a discussion piece for us. So anybody remember, and I know this is going to sound like class right now, but anybody remember what we talked about last time? Just forgive me for the class kind of bit. But I'm really just trying to get us back together mentally. Yes, but
we did talk about the baby boomers retiring and the position that they're leaving and that need to be filled.
Yeah, we did. We talked about, I think we just sort of got into that just a little bit, right? Just a little bit. We didn't go far into that. Hi, Robert. Yeah. And what else? What else? Yes, baby boomers we talked about, retiring. What else did we talk about? This was our first question. We're taking off from that. This was our first discussion question that we had. How do we make academic work financially viable and attractive to the next generation of scholars? And of course, our questions are going to generate even more than what we have on the screen, and that's okay, but we want, you know, we're going to talk about that a little bit and sort of move on. And our questions are very relative to the articles that you have. You'll find some information that will support what's there.
Let me say this. Last time we got bogged down, and I kept
saying that the discussion is not focused on the Fischler School of Education. It's not focused on Nova Southeastern University. It's focused on the field and profession of education, nationally and globally. So let's not get bogged down on our particulars of our particular work situation environment here. Let's look at the field and profession of teacher education. Let's look nationally and let's look globally as we relate to these particular articles, and also you as a professional in the field as we look to the future and what impact that might have and how we need to begin to prepared to position ourselves to be successful in doing that endeavor.
Yes, because you know we're not here to do policy or whatever discussion. And yes, Ralph is absolutely right. You know, ironically enough, there was some misconstruing of information last time. And that was just not what we were here for. We're not here to debate and to argue and to, carve out our space. We're here as the professionals that we are and to talk about these situations. We okay with that? Thank you. Well, let's move forward. Forgetting last month, because that for most of us mature people, we can't remember last week. So let's go on with today. Okay. Let's move forward. In those of you who have the handouts, that first question, and we'll get down to observations and read. And this is what we'll do a little bit more discussion here, and then we'll move on. Under the observations part, on the AASCU article, that's volume 3, number 4, April 2006, it says higher education faculty is aging, and there will be a major bulge in retirements over the next decade. Tomorrow's faculty will be more female, more diverse racially and ethnically, and will bring different expectations to their careers. Let's start to talk about what all of that means where we are. I mean, that could be you as a professor, that can be you in an administrative position. Do you see this as a fact? What impact does it have on anything? Yes, Robert?
I didn't say it.
Yes.
Well, first off, do we agree that the higher education faculty is aging? And why is that happening?
Not hit academia in the 60s, mostly on the GI Bill, and it's been a prophecy and a myth that's been perpetuated for 20 years. It hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
What hasn't happened?
And people are retiring and leaving. They're not.
You see, because the faculty is aging, that they're retiring and they're leaving.
They're not.
Oh, okay, okay. I didn't hear you just right. Yeah. So what does that mean? What implications does that have on it? We got an aging population, and they're still in academia. Is that a plus?
Well, and the caveat is that they have tenured positions. The majority of those people, whereas the newer faculty, the assistant professors we hired, are not on a tenure track position in most colleges and universities these days. So they're not leaving anywhere unless the university addresses some succession planning or some insurance or some transition to part-time or paying for insurance.
Anybody else?
We're not drawing younger people into education at any level. The rewards aren't there, the bureaucracy gets greater and greater, the regulations get tougher, the incentive to go into it is just not there.
Now, are you seeing this, let's say, from PK through graduate?
Yes.
I know I'm on a scholarship committee at our church, and we give about 30 scholarships a year, and I just don't see maybe 1 or 2 people who are interested in education anymore.
That is interesting. Anybody else? And Al gave a couple of reasons there why that might be happening. There's no real excitement about going into education anymore, perhaps at any level, correct?
Well, and some of the states are taking away incentives too for people to stay in school. In our own state, I mean, we've talked about it with several times, but why should I go for an advanced degree if it's not going to have any, there will be people that will do it for the right reasons because I want to enhance my learning and knowledge and abilities. But, I mean, to incur all that debt and not get anything back is really a deterrent for a lot of folks.
And still, with that happening, and still, we have on board the aging population. And what we're thinking about then is that a service for those that we serve? And I don't know if you get ready to answer that, Michael, but whatever.
I was just going to ask the question, how many of us would recommend to our children if they were 21 to go into education? I don't think very many of us. And it's probably a bad thing that there are aging professors such as myself that hang around. If there's a vacuum, nature abhors that, so it would be filled. And so maybe there's a good and a bad, but the whole concept of teaching and education as a profession is a battle lost, it seems to me. I'm not even sure it's a field anymore based on what happens in almost every state and in almost every level. We're quite fortunate that we have enough students to keep our doors open at the Fishler School. And we could talk about what the reasons for all of that is. Some would say it's economics, and that's, I think, a misreading of history. But the issues, the trends that are happening, there's an erosion of academic freedom. There is a meddling of education by politicians. There is a derision of those who are teachers because they get summers off. All these little things that are really not relevant to the issues at all. And I would put at the top of that list of trends that are potentially hurting education, the whole virtual schooling and distance education movement. Obviously, I'm right in the middle of that. But it's being used in many cases as a way to, I'm making a speech here, I'm sorry, as a way to erode quality education. Not by us necessarily, but by some others. And we can look at the recent legislation, take your son Sentinel out and look at the virtual school and charter school movement that was just passed by our legislature. It's pretty easy to tell that wasn't done to enhance opportunities for people. It was done to take advantage of a weakness in the education field and to use that as a way to say we really don't need schools the way we have in the past. And those are issues that we all ought to probably get up on our back legs and bark about. I'll stop speaking.
Let me ask you though, why do you say that just because there's some good reasons economically, et cetera, to move to distance learning, that means that the quality is lower?
It doesn't. But what I'm talking about is the political reasons and in some cases the economic reasons why virtual schooling and distance education are being foisted upon schools without reason. It's being done as a way to undermine education in the field of education or the profession of education.
Let me say this. Given those particular impediments, and or challenges that Mike has shared with us, the article speaks to the fact that there is still that need that because baby boomers like Ralph folks are retiring and are dying out, that there will be a host of vacancies that must be filled. The article speaks to what do you do to make it more inviting and more appealing to young professionals who may have an interest or some inclination to consider becoming our teaching professors. The article speaks about it becoming more female, more diverse, and having different expectations of what academia is all about. So if the trends are correct that it will be more female and it will be more diverse and that they who come will have different expectations, how do we prepare to create some mechanism or some approach to entice them to say, we want you here, we will help you to facilitate that interest and that transition?
Do we really think that the education field is becoming an increased number of females? It's hard to imagine that 90%, that more than 90% of the field could be female when it's already 90%.
In elementary, in secondary, it's 75%.
Well, even 75%. It's hard to imagine that
But many,
that trend could be accurate.
but many of the people who enter that profession who are locked in because they have to wait 30 years to get out, they're trapped. They had no other alternatives besides nursing and teaching in K through 12 arena to enter into other professions. So that was the traditional track. But in higher ed, I don't see this as I don't see it as female dominated. In fact, the studies have shown where are all the men in going to college, where are all the guys. They're not going into higher education. They don't see ROI to get the college education as much as the other half. But I want to remove education as a discipline because education never attracted the best and the brightest to go into teaching, but at least they knew what they were jobs when they graduated. Now, there's that whole uncertainty. But to go back to higher ed, colleges, the teaching faculty professor position 20, 30 years ago was a tenure track position full-time. Now we outsource instruction to adjuncts. Adjuncts who would, 2 years ago when we had $5 gasoline a gallon, didn't even want to, they were losing money to go across town to teach. So online is definitely very attractive to adjuncts. But if you're not going to pay benefits, and they can't get a full-time job and they're going to have to cobble out some kind of career at 3 or 4 different institutions, it's really hard to make ends meet.
I think that, what you were saying, Ralph, I think there's another issue in there, and I think this happens at all levels of school. But I see it in many higher education institutions, is that people graduate with their doctorates. They're excited, they want to do some unique and creative things, and when we have an aging faculty who doesn't want to accept that, we are almost giving them that indoctrination that we don't do it that way, we've never done it that way, this is the way we do things. And I know we don't want to personalize it to Fischler, but even in Fischler, we're very traditional. Yeah. We think we're not, but we are. And so we indoctrinate people into this very traditional sense, and they say, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I have a colleague on the main campus who left and said, I'm going into private practice.
Because that's true of all in the corporate arena and non-profits, not just
let's pass the discussion around over here. You have to be quiet. Speak up.
Well, nobody's speaking up yet, so let's let the conversation go.
This corner will be out.
People don't like to change. I mean, that's a well-known given that it's hard to change the way you do things. I just don't think that comment only applies to professors.
Two facts. One, I just read an article on Miami Herald last week that says for the first time women have surpassed men in terms of earning their bachelor's degrees and also their graduate degrees. Secondly, as you alluded to earlier, is that when we look at the baby boomers, how did they get there? They got there by way of the GI Bill. Many of them got there by way of the GI Bill that paid their way to college. So they have been there for 20, 30, or 40 years. But now they're dying. Even though we don't want to retire, many of us are dying. So it can't be business as usual. And so the clarion call is, how do we bring in new and different blood? More female, more diverse.
And I would throw something else out there. I mean, to bring in new and different blood, what are we doing with the blood that's already there? Right. And I think that's what you were talking about, Mickey. Because if it isn't an inviting situation, who's going to want to come into that situation? So it's almost like my foreparents used to say, charity begins at home. What could we do differently based on the trend? And please, again, we're not policy, and we're not even making recommendations. But what would be some positive thing? Let's again go to Fischler, and because this is where we live, we see what we have here. How could this be better based on what we know? Yes, Lisa.
I think we have to remember to consider administration, senior level administration. At most universities and colleges is not very female and is not very diverse. And they're the individuals that primarily make most of the decisions in terms of hiring faculty and staff. So I think, you know, with that being, you know, a continuing caliber with among that group, I think this, you know, trend will continue to be a challenge for those institutions.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think that it would make a lot of sense if we valued what current faculty, but new faculty particularly, bring to the table. So that instead of them just receiving, here's how things are going to be and here's how you're going to do it, that we really invite them into the process of creating new ideas, some of the decision making, and so that they don't feel like they're, you know, I think sometimes new faculty, and I'm not just talking about here, in previous places that I've worked, because you're new to the system, they assume you're a brand new person. And I remember in a previous life, I had several years of experience at the university level, but they treated me like I had just gotten, that the ink wasn't dry on my diploma. And so I thought, you know, I have to get tenure before they're going to value anything I have to say. Now that's a different issue than we're dealing with, but I think that if that sort of atmosphere occurs.
Yeah, and wouldn't someone have to buy in on that with that traditional aging group that we have, that we talked about a few minutes ago, saying you're young, you're new, you just stay over there till you do your 30 years and then maybe we'll accept you at that time, you know, kind of business. And I think we're all agreeing as we connect the trends to what we have, that there needs to be some change in our thinking, really, a shift in our paradigms, if you would, as to how do we bring that. Then would come under our concept of engagement, would it not?
And you wrote down mentoring.
Didn't we? See, we're on the same page. But then it goes, let's say that you were the administrator in charge for the year. I'm going to give you a year, not a week, not 6 months, yeah. With knowing, I mean, you don't even have to think of Fischler anymore, but knowing what you've seen and hear, what you're already exposed to as a professional, your readings, your classes, and things like that, what's going on in our world today. How could you shift? Or maybe there in your mind we don't need to shift. But what could make us raise our level of whatever because of your leadership? Because you are very, you know, forward-thinking, visionary, tuned into the times. You know some things. What would, yes?
Simply put, open the conversation. Open the conversation, bring faculty together. And not being spoken to, but having the faculty generate. And give them that opportunity to network. I have been asking since I got here for years, where do we have a faculty dining area? Where do we have a faculty library? We have room in this building. I mean, they're all rooms to set up a couple of easy chairs and where people just dialogue, where people meet with one another, whether it's with their lunch. We don't have that. And I think having worked at New York University for numerous years, that was one thing that I found. Fridays was a day when the professors all came in, but that was their reading day. No appointments, no meetings or anything, and people would visit with one another. Yeah. They would talk about the books they were reading for their classes. Here we do it, but it's through friendships, through a different mechanism. And we need to also, it isn't just putting up on Finn, we have a new professor that joined us. I think and it can't be at 9 o'clock in the morning. You know? Let's be real.
And why is that, Edna?
Come in early and be honest. You know, say, I want you in early, okay? But don't say, you know, we're having this at 8:30 in the morning. For the faculty or something, you know, just have, well, let's have a once a month, maybe at 2 o'clock or at 10 o'clock, where the faculty comes together. A couple of years ago, some of you may remember, when we first got here, that I know I was used as one of the guinea pigs, and you may remember, we had to present as new faculty to the rest of the faculty.
I remember that. I remember that.
And what we were doing, and I mean, I was so nervous, I'll never forget, but it was an excellent experience. And, you know, you get over it, but then I got to know the rest of the faculty. Those are my 2 cents.
Okay. Yes, Essie. Thank you.
Somebody earlier mentioned mentoring. And we used to have when we joined, we were paired with a professor, a seasoned professor who walked us through the system and helped us connect with the various departments and the various centers. And I think if we can have that program again.
Go ahead, I hear you.
We can have that program again where maybe seasoned faculty may be paired with new faculty. I remember mine was I worked with Charlie Ferris for many years. He was my mentor, introduced me to a lot about the university and the center, and I always had Charles to go back to whenever I had a question or concern before I went to anybody else at the center. That, I think, for administrative purposes, but also for professional. If I have been in the field of special education for 30 years, I would like to mentor somebody who is just getting into the field and pass the mantle, so to speak, to him or her, as we are now having, for instance, I see it in reading, for instance, where there is a new, fresh face to the reading program, and I can see that taking place and taking shape among the well-seasoned reading faculty with the new faculty who eventually will take over, let's say, the program when the seasoned faculty is no longer around. I think that will open up opportunities for young people to excel and to learn from us, let's say, and eventually we would feel comfortable enough to hand the programs over to them and be reassured that the program will continue.
See, and one of the trends too that we talk about a lot is that organizations have succession plans, and that what you're talking about would buy into that. That would be part of buying into that trend. Let's take a couple more comments, then we're going to move on to the next question.
Well,
Mike and then
you said a word that made me think. You say connect with. How many of our professors and our staff have an organization that they connect with other than the Fishler School? There's no departments, there's no programs, there's no department heads, there's no leaders, there's this amorphous mass of goop. It's like a stew. And you don't know who to go to be mentored or who to go to mentor. That doesn't seem very inviting to me. I don't know why we do that, but we've got recent hires here, and not just faculty, but staff hires too, and I'll bet if you go to ask them, what is the unit or the organization or the platoon or the whatever that you belong to, and they say, well, I really don't belong to anything, I'm just here to teach a course, or I'm here to... That sort of ruins the whole concept of how do we build camaraderie, how do we build an academy, how do we build a feeling that we're contributing to something bigger than we are. You know?
It needs to be a lot more official. I think we have to do it unofficially, as I told you, in the reading program where there are 3 or 4 professors and they are bound together. We're trying to do it in special education, but it's really difficult because we have different programs and we are on different campuses.
Not only difficult, it's criticized when you do.
And we're not, even on the campus here, we're on all different floors. I mean, we're not even, and I was thinking when you were talking, Mike, that